Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Phoenix Raceway, the final race of the West Coast Swing. A track where restarts are fun, you can pass on the dogleg, and a critical race for teams to prepare themselves for when they come back here in November, battling for a championship. And this weekend, we learned a lot of things, but we also learned we have a new rising star on our hands in the Ford camp. Let's talk about what went down in the final race of the West Coast Swing at the Desert. Number 1, Chase Briscoe, at long last, is a NASCAR Cup Series winner as he captured yesterday's Ruoff Mortgage 500 at Phoenix Raceway, holding off challenges from Chastain, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, and Kurt Busch to score his first career Cup Series victory, not only scoring his first career Cup Series win, but also becoming the 200th different driver in the history of the NASCAR Cup Series to win in the big leagues. This is an big moment for Chase Briscoe, and this officially locks himself into the playoffs for 2022. Let's get the backstory about Chase Briscoe before we talk about what happened with him in the race yesterday. Briscoe, a couple years ago, 7 years ago, originally was lying on the couch or working voluntarily in garages, and possibly was on the brink of not even becoming part of any racing operations anymore. Then in 2016, he was signed by Cunningham Motorsports to drive in the ARCA Series, where he would go on to win the championship that year. Then he got discovered by Brad Keselowski and signed on to drive for his truck team in 2017. He made the playoffs that year, ultimately got eliminated in the first round, but closed out the year with a solid win at Homestead in what turned out to be the final race for that race team. Then he ran part-time in the Xfinity Series in 2018 for Stewart-Haas Racing in the 98 car, and the cursed number 60 car for Roush Fenway Racing. He didn't have a lot of luck at the 60 car, but in the 98 car, he had a couple of good runs and scored his first ever Xfinity Series win at the inaugural Roval race, which was pretty impressive for a dude that's been known for dirt racing throughout his entire career. But he's really become a good road course racer in general. And then in 2019, he signed on for Stewart-Haas Racing for the full schedule. He had a solid year with them. He got his second Xfinity Series win of his career at Iowa that year. He made it to the round of 8, ultimately got eliminated, but showed signs of potential that season to carry on to 2020, which happened because he was so good throughout 2020. He started out the year really strong. He won at Auto Club, I believe it was, to start the year. Then the season was halted because of the pandemic, and when the season was about to restart in May at Darlington, Chase Briscoe and his wife Marissa suffered a tragedy as they unfortunately suffered a miscarriage. She was originally pregnant, but unfortunately they lost the baby, and it was a very tough moment for the Briscoe family. But we love incredible stories. Chase Briscoe was able to pull off an incredible win at Darlington in the Xfinity Series return from the pandemic by holding off one of the best at Kyle Busch to win, and he dedicated the win to his wife and to his family and what had been going on that past week. It was an emotional win for him, and he carried on into an incredible 2020 season where he made the championship 4, and at times it looked like he might have had the car to win the championship, but he spun out late in the race and had to settle for a top 10 finish, which ultimately did not get him the championship, but nonetheless showed a lot of potential that season. And that got him up to the Cup Series for 2021, replacing Clint Bowyer, who retired to join NASCAR on Fox. And Briscoe's rookie year, well, it was kind of a struggle. Sometimes rookies come in, they tend to struggle, but one of the things that I think Briscoe struggled with, not a lot of practice or qualifying. There was only limited practice and qualifying at certain events. The Daytona 500, the Coca-Cola 600 had qualifying. They only had practice at some of the new venues that we went to, and Briscoe didn't get a lot of track time at some of these other events to prepare himself. He had a couple of bright moments last year, but the big moment he had last year was the Indianapolis road course race, where on the final overtime restart, he got off the racetrack and passed everybody off the racetrack, getting an unfair advantage, which led to NASCAR black flagging him. And before he got the black flag announcement, he bumped Denny Hamlin out of the lead and knocked Hamlin out of contention for the win. Briscoe eventually had to stop, and he had to settle for a top 25 finish, and he and Denny Hamlin had a pretty lengthy conversation on pit road after the race, and Briscoe said, "I'm sorry I got into you, man," and Denny was not having any of it, but Briscoe was explaining with his hands, didn't shove, didn't push or anything, he was just explaining to him what happened. That was the only big moment that Briscoe had last year, but not really in a good way, I will say. But he had some bright moments. He had a couple of races where he ran well last year, and he showed that he's a good road course racer and should be good for the next couple of years. So far this year, he has been off to a very good start. The speed's been there with his cars. He got a top 5 at the Daytona 500, ran well at Auto Club, but didn't get the finish he deserved. And Las Vegas last week was kind of a struggle with spins and crashes. But yesterday, he ran well in the top 5 for the majority of the race. It dominated the final part of the final stage while holding off challenges from guys like Chase Elliott and those last few restarts against two very aggressive drivers, two very talented drivers in Tyler Reddick and Ross Chastain, who were also searching for their first career win. But Briscoe got the best of them on that final restart, and he just did a great job in general and getting Stewart-Haas Racing back to the top. They hadn't been to victory lane since Eric Almirola got them the win at New Hampshire last July, and now Briscoe's locked into the playoffs. And I've got a feeling, we all have the other Chase in the sport, Chase Elliott, but this Chase Briscoe kid, there's something special about him. I've got a feeling we're going to hear a lot about him down the road, and I think he, at the moment, is the future of Stewart-Haas Racing. So, a big win for Chase Briscoe. He was very emotional, very happy. He admitted he was crying on the radio on that last lap, which he deserved to because he's about to get his first ever NASCAR Cup Series victory. And now he's in the playoffs, and I've got a feeling we're going to see him again in victory lane as the season goes on. He's going to be a dark horse contender to look out for. And if he's part of the championship four here in November, you can guarantee that Chase Briscoe is already feeling good about his race car and his chances for down here in the fall. So a big congrats to Chase Briscoe and his team and Johnny Klausmeyer, the crew chief. The 14 team hadn't been to victory lane in the Cup Series since Clint Boyer in the rain-shortened Michigan race in 2018. Number 2, Ross Chastain. He's no underdog. This dude is for real. Last week, he had a nice run at Vegas. He led the most laps. He had a top 5 finish. He won stage 2. He finished in the third position. I think he finished, third or fourth? He had a top 5 finish last week. Let's just put it at that. And yesterday, he had a really good run with his race car. He started in the middle of the pack, but worked his way up towards the front, ran top 5 in the majority of the race, and was challenging Chase Briscoe in those final few restarts. He was giving him a run for his money, and I thought that Chastain probably was going to pull it off, but he just didn't have enough to fully put the car where he needed to get by the 14 car. But he is showing so far that his move to Trackhouse Racing and that Trackhouse Racing in general, they are no slouch. This team has been running not like it's a second-year team. They're running like they've been around the sport for 5 to 10 years right now. They're running great right now. Ross Chastain is definitely becoming a dude that we will be looking forward to watching over the next few years and being at the top of his game in this equipment. This is, of course, the remains of Chip Ganassi Racing when they acquired their assets at the end of last year, and they're running so well right now with this one team. Chastain pretty much working with the same guys he had last year at Ganassi. These are the same guys he brought over to Trackhouse, and so far, they're knocking it out of the park. They're having great race cars. The speed is in these cars. I mean, Daniel Suarez struggled in the first part of the race, but eventually worked his way up to a 9th place finish at the end, despite getting into Austin Dillon. But Trackhouse Racing and Ross Chastain in particular, they are here, and they mean business. And they're a team that I think is going to continue to keep competing for top 5s and top 10s and eventually race wins. It's not a matter of if Ross Chastain wins a race. It's a matter of when he wins a race. It could be next week. It could be the following week. But he is showing up, folks. This guy is the real deal. I mean, he's going to be one of our top contenders to watch over the next few years. So this Trackhouse team, Ross Chastain, they're off to a great start so far, and I'm very, very impressed by the speed and the performance they've got in these cars so far. Number 3, Ryan Blaney dominated yesterday's race. I mean, we talked about Chase Briscoe dominating the final stage. Well, the guy who dominated the race in general was the 12 car, Blaney. Started on the pole, ran up front, and then the first pit stop for the competition caution, they got caught for speeding, and they had to restart the tail in the field. But they came flying through the field like they were a rocket ship. They had a fast race car. They got to the top 10, and they decided, let's pit when the late race caution towards the end of the first stage came out and said, we're going to put on a different strategy, and we're going to try to put ourselves in position to take the lead by the time Stage 2 starts, because other guys in front of us stayed out, and they'll have to pit. And when Stage 2 started, he dominated on pretty much worn-out tires, holding off challenges from guys like Chase Elliott and Kevin Harvick and Chase Briscoe and William Byron. Blaney had such a good run yesterday. Unfortunately, in the final stage, the pit stops pitting them further back in the field, and even though they were able to get to 4th, they were never really able to recover to get back to that track position they had early in the race. But the speed was there at the 12 car. After 2 rough weeks, the past 2 weeks, coming off the top 5 he had at Daytona, or top 10, he has speed so far. They are running well. They are a team that can win races and be a championship contender. There's no doubt about it. They just got to seal the deal. They can't have these mistakes that prevent them from winning. They've got to minimize those mistakes if they're going to be up front. But the speed's there with the 12 car. Him and Jonathan Hassler so far in their first year together as a crew chief and driver duo, they are doing very well so far. They've got speed in their race cars. If you can minimize the mistakes and put them aside, and you're up front and you are consistent throughout the race, the wins are going to come, and they're going to come pretty quickly. So the 12 team should be very encouraged by the speed they had yesterday. I mean, a good bounce back from some of the adversity that they had with slow pit stops and the early race speeding penalty. That was really good by the 12 team. Blaney will be in the victory lane relatively soon. Number 4, the veterans or champions of the sport had kind of up and down days yesterday. Some were able to run well, some not so much, and they didn't really get the finishes they deserved, so let's get into them. Starting off with Kevin Harvick, the man who has been pretty much the king of Phoenix. He has the most wins there out of any active driver right now at 9, and in general, he is the winningest driver at Phoenix. He is so dominant there, but ever since that spring win in 2018, he hasn't been to victory lane there. He hasn't had the success that he's typically had at Phoenix, so it's been kind of puzzling to see this out of Kevin Harvick. I mean, he's run well, he's had top 5s, he's had top 10s, but he hadn't been to victory lane. Yesterday, I felt like they did a good job. They ran well. This was the best race I've seen Kevin Harvick have so far this year because, yeah, he got a top 10 in California, but he struggled in that race. He had a top 15 last week. He was just kind of in the top 10, top 15 all day. Yesterday, they ran top 5, top 10 the entire day. Came out with a 6th place finish with his Hunt Brothers Ford. They ran strong, and I think he and Rodney Childers learned something with this race car. Now all they got to do is they got to find the checkered flag first. And I felt like Kevin Harvick, if he was to break the winless streak, it would be at Phoenix yesterday. That was not the case, but nonetheless, they ran very well. Chase Elliott, the man who won here in 2020 in the fall and won the championship on top of that and had a nice run the past 2 races there with a top 5 last year and a top 5 in the fall while battling for a championship, trying to defend his title. He ran well yesterday. He had a good car. Didn't qualify well, but he came flying up through the field like Ryan Blaney did on some of those restarts and some other guys. Elliott had speed in his race car yesterday, and they led 50 laps. They challenged for the stage wins in stage 1, stage 2. But then with 7 laps to go running in 7th spot, Elliott's just got out of control off of turn 2, spun around, didn't hit anything, had to come to pit road, put on tires, and was able to get back up and at least salvage an 11th place. The speed was there. The finish really didn't dictate how they ran, but they had the speed in their race car, so they got to feel pretty confident about the way they ran. And plus, Chase Elliott's always been good at Phoenix, so this doesn't really affect him whatsoever. Kyle Busch, he kind of had a struggle with his car yesterday. He wasn't really thrilled about it on the radio set. I can't really catch up. I can't pass. All that stuff. You know Kyle Busch, you know how he is on the radio, animated. But they made the most of it with a nice top 10 finish, so they got to feel pretty happy about that. Martin Truex Jr., different story. They didn't really run well yesterday. I'm puzzled by that because Truex is a former winner here. He should be up towards the front. He should be battling for the lead, or at least a top 5 with these guys. But they just hung around the top 10, top 15. And then the final stage came around. He blew right front tire off of turn 2 and hit the outside wall so hard it took him out of contention for the race. Did they learn some things? They learned some things about what they need in their car the next time they come back here, because that setup they had yesterday, that didn't cut it. So they've got to regroup, and they've got to move on to the next short track that they're going to run at so they can learn better for when they come back here in the fall if they are a championship floor contender. But they've learned what not to do, and another thing you should learn what not to do is don't have a right front tire puncture and hit the outside wall, because even as short as this track is, if you hit that wall really hard, that impact's going to be pretty brutal. And Kyle Larson, who the last time we were here, won the race and won the championship in his return to NASCAR. Yesterday, he had a pretty interesting day as well. He had to start at the rear because of steering problems from qualifying, worked his way up to the top 10, got up to as high as 5th at one point. I felt like maybe if they get a few more adjustments, they could do just what they did in the fall race last year and knock it out of the park on the final pit stop and put themselves in position to win. But with a couple laps to go in the race, right after Truex got knocked out, Kyle Larson's engine began to give away, and he fell out of the race with engine problems. But they learned some things. They had speed in their car as well before the engine problem occurred. So they should be pretty positive about the way they ran yesterday. So some of the championship guys didn't really run that well, but they got the best possible. They learned some things. So drivers didn't get the finishes they probably deserved, but they learned some things for when we come back here in the fall if they're a part of the championship form. And number 5, the racing product yesterday, the first mile race for this next-gen car, it was pretty good. I mean, the restarts, they're fun as usual. They're always fun to see them running 3 and 4 wide on the dogleg, and they're 3 and 4 wide in turns 1 and 2, and sometimes in 3 and 4. But when they got spread out, it was kind of a little bit tough to pass at times. You see guys running up in the high groove, the middle groove, and even on the bottom groove and the turns. A lot of guys were trying different lanes yesterday. It was a little bit of a tricky race to say. It was just a good race. Not the best race like we've seen the past couple of weeks, but it was a good enough race. And we're going to have some of those races this year. Not every race is going to be great with this next-gen car. I think we kind of got the first one that was just not that great yesterday, but it was above average in my opinion. So we learned some things, and we'll hopefully put out a better showing for these fans when we come back here in November when we're deciding who our champion's going to be. But it was a good race in general, I thought, yesterday. And also yesterday was the final race at the moment for the season for Danica Patrick in the Fox booth with Mike Joy and Clint Boyer. I felt like she did a good job with the team. Next week, we're bringing back Jeff Gordon, who is the vice chairman of Hendrick Motorsports right now and left Fox after the season concluded last year to take on this role. He's going to come back and join us next week in the booth. It's going to be good to hear old Jeffy in the booth. I mean, him and Clint Boyer... They always like to make fun of each other and like to pick each other. It's a lot of fun. Those guys, they're just fun to listen to, and I enjoy listening to them a lot. So it'll be fun to listen to Jeff, join them in the booth next weekend, and hopefully he'll do it for another race this year because he was really good at what he was doing before he decided to take on the chairman role, which I think he's doing a really good job at so far. But it'll be nice to hear him give his take on the racing product next weekend in the booth. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, with the West Coast Swing officially in the books, we're off back to the Southeast. Next week, we're going to be in Atlanta Motor Speedway. And this is not your typical Atlanta Motor Speedway. We have reconfigured the track. We've increased the banking in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We've narrowed the track. And some people think this could be another super speedway? I don't know. We're going to find out when we go there. They're going to have a different aero package for the Cup cars compared to, unlike the Xfinity and the Truck Series. They're going to run their normal packages. Cup sounds like we're going with the Super Speedway package. So, could be a 550 horsepower race, more than likely, like we've seen with the Gen 6 cars. But we don't know. We're going to find out what we've got for Atlanta this upcoming race. All I can say is, strap in, folks. This could be one of the most interesting races you will see this year. So, who will come out on top next week? Will hometown boy Chase Eliot be the first one across the checkered flag? Will Chase Briscoe get his second career win next week? Or will Kevin Harvick get his first win of the season and break the winless streak at a track where he's been very successful and at a track where he scored his first ever Cup Series victory 21 years ago in 2001, the year we lost Dale? Can't wait to find out. Can't wait to see what happens on this newly reconfigured Speedway. And enjoyed the West Coast Swing. Enjoyed the races out there. It was fun to watch them on television. Subscribe, like. Thank you all for watching. And congratulations to Chase Briscoe and Storehouse Racing on their first win of the season. Thank you all for watching. Let's go racing!